Hello again, everyone. Terry Earthwind over at Consortium, along with the magnificent
And the Vettrus-Nichols.
And here we go with another high vibe conversations. And just like the rest of them, it's going to be pretty interesting. Talk about childhood trauma. That's a biggie. Welcome, everybody. Linda?
Yeah, welcome. Well, there are so many areas we could be looking at as well. So, right now, war is very much on our minds, and there's so much childhood trauma that comes out of war. There's physical, emotional abuse in the home. Dorrit works with hypnosis, so she believes in past lives because she can't not believe in past lives. Can't make up this shit, huh, Dorrit? Yeah, so people can bring childhood trauma from a past life into this life. It's the same energy, even if you don't really know what happened. So yeah. Jenny, how about you? Where else can we be, looking as far as like childhood trauma? Can you think of any other circumstances or what you've seen with clients that way, where it came from?
Definitely, yes. Trauma is absolutely experiencing war and having been in a situation where you fear for your life. But it's also so much more. It also comes down to how we view ourselves.
That's a good point.
Or even expectations that we experienced that others had on us that were maybe very unreasonable. That it's like, I think we all carry trauma from our childhood. And of course, entering this conversation, my mind is going back to the trauma that I've experienced as a child. And I remember going through PTSD treatment and looking at the whole relationship with myself. And I realized that I got to go back to a very early age to heal and make me whole. I remember sitting next to myself when I was 12. That's a very clear memory to me. I had been spending that night over at a friend's house, and oh, hold on, that's my baby girl. Hold on just one second. Alicia, jag spelar in en live. Du får vänta lite. Fråga alla. Ja, vi tar det sen. Vi fixar det sen. Okay? So I remember sitting next to myself, and as I had been over at a friend's house, and an adult man had been there giving me drinks, crossing my boundaries, putting me in a place where a child should never, ever be. I remember sitting next to myself and just sharing the words that I wish I would have heard at that time. And it's been such a healing experience to be the one who saves little Jenny. That's me. I get to carry her in my heart into the future. And so it's been a part of me also getting to know myself, to spend some time with the trauma that I've experienced. And also what comes to mind is that it is so difficult sometimes to know how to talk with people and what to ask and how to be around people who have experienced severe trauma. So yeah, what's coming up for you guys there?
Yeah, who wants to go next?
I can go. I've had clients talking about the same stuff that Jenny mentioned, so all I could do was nod and yeah, affirm that I've heard that story many times. I actually had a client a few years ago, and she came to me because she had problems with her finances. She had a good job. She was paid very well. But as soon as the money came into her account, it was like fire in her pockets, and she just had to spend it all. So before a week was gone, she had blown everything, and she was struggling for the next 3 weeks to keep afloat. And that happened over and over again. And she tried to have more jobs, get more paid to kind of get that fixed. And she couldn't understand why she couldn't have her finances in a better shape, so to speak. So I put her under in hypnosis, and what she found was terrifying. She had completely blocked that out. She had been abused as a child by a close member of the family and was paid to keep her mouth shut. So he gave her money to shut up, money and gifts. So she had been carrying that shame, that that money was something horrible. Money was compared to something horrible for her. So when she got the money, she just wanted to get rid of it, because that in her subconscious mind, without her even realizing it, was something horrible. So when she got to confront that and save her little self, like Jenny said, things started to work out better and better and better for her, because she realized why she did it, and she didn't want him to have power over her anymore. So that was a really good way for her to kind of get past this and heal. Yeah.
Wow, that is so big. Maybe everybody mute while you're waiting to talk. Can you, yeah. That's, what Terry and I call repetitive behavior. And we don't do past life regression. We do cellular regression in this lifetime, if you will. And we had a client who, she and the sister were standing on the at the edge of the road with a lemonade stand, and their father came up to him and said, you're never going to make any money at this. And one sister took it in just fine, like it wasn't a big deal, probably didn't even take it in, and our client did, and it locked hard. And she was always with startup companies, so the money was scarcer, or everything might fold, and she was so afraid that she wouldn't have any money. I believe she was a single mom at one time too. She was afraid her son would die, and it was so extreme for her. So it's really interesting. Two kids, same family, same upbringing. One kid can perceptually take something in completely different than the other, sibling or siblings. So yeah, perspective. And then how we speak to ourselves. And I know Jenny has shared quite a bit about how she kind of beat herself up and wasn't as kind to herself as she could have been, and how, because of trauma, the blame and shame goes on the child as well, and that continues into adulthood with a negative mindset and poor self-talk. So yeah, it's interesting. Anything coming up for you, Shelle?
So as I was trying to engage in the comments there a little bit while other people were talking, what was coming up for me is thinking about the book What Happened to You, the Oprah and Dr. Perry book. And there's a lot of stories that they share in this book about childhood trauma and how it pops up in different ways and manifests itself in different ways in people's lives. And one thing that I found really interesting is that sometimes, like, we don't have the awareness to know that something has happened to us. We don't understand why we're triggered by something. We can't remember a memory of something happening to us. But when we're at our like developmental stages, like our early childhood stages, our brain and our body are developing as well. Like, it's not just the memory. Our muscles can remember things that happened, even if our brain hasn't fully processed it. And even in the brain, and this is stuff that Dr. Bruce Perry talks about in the book too, on a brain psychological and brain developmental perspective. There's things there like that are held onto that don't remember as like a memory that you just like can remember and recall, but it's still there intrinsically, like in your brain, in your cortex. And as your brain develops, like, so there might be something with like a sense of smell. You might be in an environment when you're a toddler or younger or a little older, and like a man, I think is one of the stories, is dating a woman, the mother, and he's got this cologne, this scent about him. And so the baby is processing that, and a memory is then stored in their brain. And so then let's say this man starts abusing the mother or even the child, or screaming or whatever is happening. And maybe they don't remember any of that, but years later, you can't remember why you're reacting when you smell the same thing. Well, now you're triggering something that is like being stored from like the early developmental stages that you didn't even know was there, but it's there because your body and your brain remember these things. So I don't want to butcher these stories because they're so well written and told in the book, but it just goes to show that like we don't always know what has happened until we unlock that thing that has been like written deep in, like imprinted almost deep inside of us. And that could be like a bodily reaction or function. That could be a sensory thing. That it could be smell. It could be taste. It could be the way the weather feels on your skin. Like something happened somewhere that like provokes this response. And so to Jenny having the awareness to like recall that memory from her early childhood, because I know she had buried it for a while, and then something triggered that memory. Something triggered that she could unlock it and process it. But until we can have that awareness to go back and figure out what happened to you, we don't always know. And for myself, like reading the book especially, I felt like I was there because I could relate in a lot of ways, but like sometimes I don't always remember why I feel this way. Sometimes like it takes me working with Linda or having a conversation to like, oh yeah, that did happen. Like, oh, and I have been holding that like in the middle of my back. Like it takes going through a process to unlock these things. And so, yeah, a lot comes up for me because a lot is buried down, and it's through the work that we've all done together that I've been able to unearth some of the things too and go through them. It's just interesting how like, because I don't understand the brain, but when I hear other people explain it to me, I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that, Chelle. Like, what comes back to me is that this man gave me alcohol with lime. And since that moment, like, I just hated lime. I couldn't stand the taste or the smell of it. If I was in another family's home, they would just bring one out. Like, I would feel that 3 rooms away. And also, what this is bringing up is that I remember being 12 years old, and I just knew that I felt terrible. I felt so, like I couldn't explain that I'm experiencing anxiety or I am experiencing my boundaries being crossed, or I'm experiencing my value as a human being being trampled on, that it's about the disrespect of it. But I knew, like, I had this self-talk going on at the point that I am feeling so bad. And I remember stepping into an adult perspective, and I started telling myself, it is going to be okay. This too shall pass. It is impossible that you will feel this way for a lifetime. There is going to be an end to this. And that's also something that happens in trauma, that I stepped into adulthood very early on. So I started taking on a lot of responsibility from that point. And that's something that I've also, gotten to work on, to let go of so many things that are outside of my control. I did show up for myself at the time. And also I get to allow myself to be that child and heal as that child. And now recognize where I end and where other people begin.
Thank you.
Wow. Cool.
You got something? Because the number one thing is smell. And when we take people through our process, we have it rigged, if you will, so that they don't trigger, which is pretty unheard of. And we keep them to the facts, and we keep them out of this story of a memory. So that's a whole another conversation. But it's been really interesting how we can break into something that's been so walled off and so protected for such a long time. And Sigmund Freud was attempting to do that. He was sure there was a childhood memory that was driving people in their adult life. He just never figured out how to get to it. Unfortunately, we don't use hypnosis. Dorrit does. Unfortunately, hypnosis at the time of Sigmund Freud at one point was outlawed, because they were actually hypnotizing little kids to steal and stuff like that. So then he went to what is it? Oh, cocaine, and then he became an addict. And then did he commit suicide? Yeah.
Committed suicide. Yeah.
So it's like, oh dear. So it's just it's a really great feeling that we've actually were able to get to what he was looking for, and he'd be happy with us.
Yeah, the sequence is, works very closely with behavioral sciences, and we have a behavioral scientist with us right now,
Jenny Landgren.
and Jenny Landgren, and that has been delightful to on this journey of helping so many people all over the world, that something as simple as the 5 senses can be such an amazing tool to take someone back to where the senses are in the back of the brain and work forward. So they literally walk in the back door of a memory that's been walled off in the front since early childhood, and they're completely out of emotion. That's so powerful.
It really
So
is,
powerful.
especially with PTSD or complex PTSD.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been able to help the veteran population quite a bit too. So, and PTSD doesn't just come from war. Moms losing babies and all kinds of things can cause it. As I'm preaching to the choir here, ladies know that. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Now, when you mention the PTSD, my youngest daughter, she got PTSD from being bullied at school. So it doesn't take more than that, She is an empath, and she is very sensitive, like highly sensitive functioning. But just 2 girls in her class, on and off with, we want to be your friend and we really like you, to the next day she wasn't included. They didn't want to be with her. So that emotional kind of abuse that she was experiencing at school was enough to give her PTSD, and she was in treatment in psychiatry for over a year, and she still can have like panic attacks, and now she is 22. So yeah, be careful.
Right.
That's so spot on, because an amnesic, if you're a young child, you have no language skills. So you can't say, Mom and Dad, this just happened, or I just saw this happen and I'm terrified, but I don't know what to do. You can't.
We work
So
pre-language.
the brain that has a natural defense system called amnesia, and it walls it in, protects you. That's what it's for, right? And then you trigger over and over and over again later on in life, because a similar response happened, and the amnesia thinks, oh, this is something like what I'm hiding for you. Maybe you want to think about it a few hundred times. Yeah. But it's not, we have found that it's not a bad thing. It's just a response. And until you find the driver of the response, it's just going to continue. That's the bad news. But it's interesting work. And every one of my almost 150 personal clients have been completely unique, completely. Yeah, things happen to kids, but they see things too that they just don't know how to figure out and don't have the skills to express it. So, that's what ends up happening.
When things happen that nobody else knows about, they don't have that opportunity. Or if they're just pre-language, then there isn't anybody to help them really process it.
Yeah.
It's tough. All right.
Good stuff.
You guys good?
Shell had something going on.
Shell has lots of things to say over in the chat.
Especially when somebody is saying that they want to share their story, and then I'm like, okay, well, this is a safe space. Yeah, please, that's what we're here for. But I was going to say, and I'm saying it now, so it's not a was, it's an is. The work that I've done through Linda and Terry, the work that I've done with Dorrit, like with the hypnosis, oh my God, two totally separate things that somehow align a little bit. The process that I went through with Dorrit, like I had all of this energy just localized to my eyes. I don't know if you remember this happening, Dorrit. And it was like I was having a seizure. It was like I was epileptic, and I'm not. And I was trying to fight it at first. And I just had to like succumb to it and like let go, because like I knew I was in a safe space. Like, why fight it? But like just the ability to let go and recall things and pull up things that I had no preconceived notions of. And yeah, like we got to a place where like I remembered familiar things there. My grandfather came to me. I remembered the place where he brought me to. Like these were all very familiar things, but it's not like I went into that experience like, oh, I'm gonna like recall a memory of my grandpa. Like that memory never actually happened. It was just the way that I was putting the things together. And then we unpacked it and like, oh, well, maybe this means this and maybe this means that. And like, turned out my childhood bird that I was seeing was like Bella telling me that she was ready to leave and like that I was safe to go on to, she was safe to leave me. I was safe to be myself, and she felt okay, like giving me that space and freedom to do so. And it was just like when all those pieces came together, it was like, you think about like, oh, I never really had that connection to my childhood bird back then. Like, oh my God, it's like coming up now. I was like 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that age range. And I had this bird, and like, this is the most annoying bird ever. Like I had no emotional connection to it. I was just like, you're here. I didn't take care of it well. Like it just was. And then to have this hypnotic experience that like was so powerful, and it unlocked so many things for me through this childhood bird. And it was, you never know what's locked in there. You just don't. So that was a long-winded way, as always. to say that like these experiences are powerful. And when you go through the process to unlock the things that have been like buried and repressed and holding you back, like you can change that narrative, just like Jenny did, just like Dorrit has, just like Linda and Terry have, just like I'm still doing. Like it's a process, but it's worth doing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Right on.
To kind of explain the difference between our work and Dorrit's, ours is like a one and done, and then there's aftercare, and Dorrit, is definitely the aftercare, and she's also a great one to go to before our process as well. So, yeah, it's interesting. So, well, thank you, everybody. This has, as usual, been so juicy, and yeah, it's just really nice to be able to be with other people who understand what you're even saying. So, yeah.
Right on. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. As promised, this was that good. So thanks again, and we're going to be back next week for more. See you soon.